This video will be a note-for-note breakdown of the guitar and bass parts that appear during the interlude. A tab sheet of the guitar part will briefly be displayed after its respective analysis. A demo of all parts combined will be featured near the end of the video. The tuning used in this video and on the record is standard E and 440 wavelength calibration with the low E string drop to full step to D. A brief segment at the end of this video will walk through this tuning process. Once we reach the interlude of the song, the music is going to slow down to a halftime feel. It will then follow a 2-measure long riff pattern that gets repeated for 16 measures. We'll begin by placing the first finger on the A string at the 1st fret. We're going to pick this note down on 1 and quickly slide up to the 5th fret as we do it. We're only going to pick this note once and it's going to ring out as an 8th note just like this. 1. Once we get there, we're going to play the open E string 3 times with all downstrokes counted and 2 and. What this is 2 8th notes followed by a 16th note. On the beat, which is the final 16th note of the 2nd quarter, we're going to go with that 3rd finger to the A string at the 3rd fret and pick that up. So with the 4-count lead in, this is what the first measure sounds like so far. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and up. Okay, this last note is actually tied to a 16th note on 3, so I'm going to keep the 3 silent in the count for simplicity. So on E, the 16th note right after 3, we're going to pick the open E string upwards and let it ring out as an 8th note. It's actually 2 16ths tied together, but it's the same thing either way. We'll finish up the 3rd quarter by picking that open E string upwards on the beat, the final 16th note of that quarter. To finish up the measure, we're going to play 4 more 16th notes, got a 4-yanda, pick down, up, down, with the final 16th note, the beat, being produced with the left hand using a hammer-on. So on 4, we'll place that 3rd finger on the E string at the 3rd fret and pick it down. On E, we pick the open E string up. On 2, the middle finger goes to the 2nd fret on the E string, pick down. And the hammer-on is the 3rd finger going to the 3rd fret on that final 16th note, the beat. So with the 4-count lead in, this is what the first measure will sound like. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and E, 4 E and And now we've reached the 2nd measure. There's only 2 notes that are going to be different than the first measure. The count and the picking technique will be identical. On the 1 beat, we're going to play this note where the middle finger is on the A string at the 2nd fret. The next 3 notes are exactly the same as the previous measure, working off of the open E string. On the beat, right after 2, the first finger will go to the A string at the 1st fret. That's picked upwards, okay? The rest of the measure after that is identical. So with the 4-count lead in, let's just run through the 2nd measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and E, 4 E and With the 4-count lead in, let's run through the first 2 measures in sequence just one time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and E, 4 E and 1 and 2 and E, 4 E and The interlude begins at 2 minutes and 5 seconds. Guitar 1 will fade in unaccompanied on the first pass through the 2-measure riff pattern, while the rest of the band is at rest. The effect used on Guitar 1 is unknown, but it will still sound good if only distortion is used. The full band will enter on the 2nd pass and remain active for the rest of the interlude. On the 4th pass through the riff pattern, a single note in the 2nd measure of the riff pattern will be changed. This will also occur on the 8th and final pass through the riff pattern. Here's what that change will look like. Instead of going with the 1st finger to the A string on the 1st fret, on the beat, which is the final 16th note of the 2nd quarter, we're going to go with the 3rd finger to the A string at the 3rd fret instead. Otherwise, the measure is exactly the same as we've been playing it. So with the 4-count lead in, let's do the 7th and 8th measures in sequence just one time. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 in a E, a 4 E and a 1 and 2 in a E, a 4 E and a. Let's run through all 16 measures in sequence just one time. Remember, we're playing a 2-measure long riff pattern 8 times, which gives us our 16 measures. On the 4th and 8th pass through, we're going to adjust one note in that second measure by going to the 3rd finger on the A string at the 3rd fret on the upbeat after 2 instead of going to the 1st finger on the A string at the 1st fret. I won't count aloud as I play. I'm just going to give you the 4-count lead in. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's also some random noises and effects in the background that couldn't be determined before shooting this video. Although they seem insignificant, they would still add value to the song if able to be determined and plugged in. Guitar 1 is going to fade in as it plays the first 2 measures unaccompanied. Guitar 2 and the bass will enter the beginning of the 3rd measure. Notice the yellow highlight at the beginning of the 3rd measure and also at the end of the 4th measure. These are repeat signs. This means to repeat this passage of music twice as indicated above the 4th measure. Also notice the diagonal line with the dot above and below it right in between the 3rd and 4th measures. That means to substitute in the previous 2 measures in place of these. So essentially we're playing the first 2 measures 3 times in a row, and then we reach the 2 measures at the bottom of the page, actually the 7th and 8th measures. On paper it looks like the 5th and 6th. There are 16 measures during the interlude, so after we play these first 8 measures, exactly like we see them here on paper, we're just going to repeat them a second time the way we just played them. The bass is going to double the guitars note for note. If you're using a pick, you'll want to pick the notes on the bass exactly the same way you're picking the guitars. Let's run through the entire bass part just one time. I won't count this aloud as I play. I'll just give you the 4-count lead in. 1, 2, 3, 4. After the interlude, the pace of the music picks back up. This will be noticed on the 2 and 4 beats of the snare, which are half as fast during the interlude. During this outro segment, there is a 1 measure long fill that's easily overlooked or lost in the mix. It appears at the end of the main riff twice in succession. The first appearance is at 3 minutes and 5 seconds, while the other is at 3 minutes and 12 seconds. This will also be doubled by the bass. Here's a quick look at that fill on guitar. The fill is going to be 1 full measure long. We're going to play 7/8 notes with all downstrokes in palm muting. On 1, we're going to have an 1/8 note rest. So on the and beat right after 1, we're going to place that first finger on the 2nd fret, barring the E, A, and D strings. Okay? The first 3/8 notes are going to be counted and to and, just like this. And to and. Okay, on 3, we're going to go to the 3rd fret for 1/8 note and bar them same 3 strings. On the and beat after 3, we're going to go back to the first finger on the 2nd fret, barring them 3 strings. On 4, we're going to go back to the middle finger on those 3 strings. And on the and beat, the last 1/8 note of the measure, we're going to pick all 3 of them strings open. So I'm going to do this fill slowly with a 4 count lead in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and. Okay, now sped up to a more record-like feel. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and. The bass guitar will also double this fill note for note. What I'm going to do now is just play the main riff 1 time and add that fill at the end just so you can see how it plugs in. I won't count this aloud as I play, I'll just give you a 4 count lead in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's a quick look at that fill. It's going to be played at 3 minutes and 5 seconds and also at 3 minutes and 12 seconds. The PM in the middle of the page with the line means to palm mute. In order to play the really cool guitar riff that starts out this song, you're going to have to tune your low open E string down a full step to the pitch of D. If done correctly, you place a finger on the low open E string at the 7th fret and pick this note, followed by the open A string, and the 2 notes should sound the same, just like this. The low open E string is now the low open D string. If we play the low open D string along with the open A and the higher pitched open D string, these 3 strings will create an open D5 power chord just like this. Notice that when I play that D5 power chord, I'm laying my pinky on the higher pitched 3 strings that we're not using just to dampen them out so none of those notes ring out accidentally.